Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the kind of people who walk into a conversation like it's a stage, except they never leave it. You know the type. You're halfway through a sentence, and suddenly you're in the audience. It's frustrating. It's exhausting. But more than anything, it leaves you feeling like your voice doesn't matter. So let's flip the script. First, awareness is your entry point. Before you react, observe. Watch how the conversation shifts. You'll notice a pattern. Their stories are longer, louder, and always find their way back to them. Once you see it, you can steer it. Next, you teach people how to treat you. If you stay silent while someone steamrolls over your point again and again, guess what? They learn that's okay. But the moment you interject, clarify, or re-enter the conversation, you send a new message. I'm part of this too. Now let's talk about delivery. You don't need to get loud to get heard. Control the tempo. Slow the conversation down if it's being hijacked. Use pauses, questions. That's how you reset the rhythm without raising your voice. When you interrupt, do it with purpose. Don't cut them off because you're annoyed. Cut in because the group is losing balance. Say, "Can I pause you for a second?" Or, "I want to jump in here before we move on." That's not rude, that's leadership. Re-enter the room. If someone's dominating, shift the attention. Try, "That's an interesting point. Sarah, what's your take?" You're not shutting anyone down. You're opening the floor. You're reminding everyone this is a conversation, not a monologue. Finally, don't match chaos with chaos. Your calm becomes the anchor. When someone's talking over everyone, the most powerful thing you can do is stay grounded. That's where your influence lives, in presence, not volume. Look, not every conversation needs to be won, but every conversation deserves to be shared. And the moment you start holding that space, not just for you, but for others, you stop being a passive participant, and start becoming the quiet force no one can ignore. Awareness is your superpower. It's the quiet skill that changes everything. Not just in conversations, but in relationships, negotiations, and life. Most people miss the signs because they're too focused on being polite, keeping the peace, or trying not to be rude. But politeness without awareness becomes passiveness. And here's the truth. When someone constantly dominates a conversation, it's not just about words, it's about control. And if you're not aware, that control shifts in their favor every time. Notice the shift. You'll feel it first before you can describe it. The energy in the room narrows. The dialogue becomes one-directional, and suddenly you're no longer part of a discussion. You're sitting through a performance. The moment that spotlight stops moving and just stays on one person, that's not by accident. That's a pattern, a habit, sometimes even a tactic. And your job isn't to fight them for the mic. It's to own your space. You see, awareness doesn't require a reaction. It requires recognition. That means tuning in to how often you're being interrupted, how frequently you're being talked over, and how quickly your contributions are dismissed or redirected. Are you being heard, or are you just waiting for your turn while someone else takes the floor and never gives it back? Here's the twist. Most dominant talkers don't even realize they're doing it. They're operating on autopilot. Their default setting is me, and until someone gently but firmly redirects that energy, they will keep operating that way. That someone can be you, but only if you're aware. Awareness allows you to spot subtle shifts in tone, timing, and engagement. You start noticing how often the conversation gets pulled into someone else's world, how rarely they ask questions, how they circle back to their own experiences again. And once you recognize that pattern, you have a choice to sit quietly and let it happen, or to take the lead and rebalance the room. This isn't about being combative. It's about being present fully, actively, with intent. You don't need to overpower anyone. You just need to reclaim the part of the conversation that belongs to you. You do that by speaking up, when you're interrupted. You do that by calmly saying, "I'd like to finish what I was saying." You do that by asking, "Can we hear from someone else on this?" Simple words, small shifts, but powerful results. The key is to stop giving your power away through silence. Awareness gives you the insight, but action is what gives you the influence. So the next time someone dominates a conversation, don't just nod and smile and wait your turn. Read the room, feel the shift. Notice when the space stops being shared, and then take it back with grace, with calm, and with clarity. Your voice has value. It's not meant to be buried under someone else's. So if you've ever walked away from a conversation feeling small, invisible, or frustrated, let that be your last time. Start noticing the signs. Start trusting your instincts. Start choosing presence over passivity, because the moment you do, everything changes. Awareness doesn't make you laugh, it makes you effective. It keeps you from getting lost in other people's noise. And most importantly, it helps you show up not just in the conversation, but in your own light. You teach people how to treat you, not with grand speeches or dramatic confrontations, but through your everyday actions, your boundaries, your words, your silence. Whether you realize it or not, you're constantly sending messages about what you'll accept, what you'll tolerate, and what you value. And people pick up on that quickly. Silence, as simple as it seems, is incredibly powerful. But that power goes both ways. If someone interrupts you repeatedly and you say nothing, that silence doesn't say, "I'm being patient." It says, "This is." If someone dominates every conversation and you keep smiling and nodding, your silence doesn't say, "I'm just being polite." It says, "You can keep doing this." Over time, that silent acceptance becomes permission. And what was once a moment becomes a habit. It's not about being aggressive, it's about being aligned. You can be calm and still have a boundary. You can be respectful and still speak up. The balance lies in your tone, your posture, your choice of words. When someone starts speaking over you, cutting you off, or turning the conversation into a monologue, you have the right to step in to say, "I wasn't finished yet," or "Let me add to that," or "I'd like to share my perspective too." These aren't confrontations, these are course corrections. Because when you speak up, you're not just defending your right to talk. You're reminding everyone in the room that you belong in the conversation, that your ideas, thoughts, and presence have weight. You're not asking for permission, you're standing in your space. And every time you do that, you send a new message. I value myself, and I expect others to do the same. And yes, it may feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you've spent years swallowing your words or shrinking to keep the peace. But let's be honest, was it really peace? Or was it quiet frustration? Because peace without voice isn't peace. It's suppression. When you start showing up differently, people will adjust. Some may resist, some may push back, and that's okay. That just means the dynamic is shifting. You're setting a new tone. You're teaching them, maybe for the first time, that you are not here to be sidelined or talked over. You're not here to be agreeable at the cost of your self-respect. Every time you speak up, you're not just correcting behavior. You're creating a standard. You're setting a bar for how you expect to be treated. And over time, people will either rise to meet it or remove themselves from your space. Either way, you win. It starts small. A word here, a moment there. But those small acts build something stronger. Self-trust. And once you trust your voice, it's much harder for others to drown it out. You teach people how to treat you by how you treat yourself. If you respect your own voice, others are more likely to follow. If you honor your space in the conversation, others learn to honor it. If you choose to show up instead of shrinking back, you create a ripple that changes not just that moment, but the way people engage with you moving forward. So, don't underestimate the power of your presence. And don't let silence write a story that doesn't reflect your worth. You don't need to shout. You just need to show up with intention, with truth, and with the quiet strength that says, "I'm here. I matter and I will be heard." Control the tempo, not the volume. Because real influence doesn't live in how loud you speak. It lives in how steady you stay. We often think that to be heard, we need to match the energy in the room. Talk over the talkers, get louder, be bigger, but the truth is, volume doesn't equal value. And dominance doesn't require noise. It requires presency. Presence isn't about grabbing attention. It's about holding it. It's the energy you bring before you even speak. It's how you sit, how you look at someone, how you respond. When someone dominates a conversation, they usually speed things up, rushing from one story to the next, leaving no space for pause, questions, or thought. They control the room by controlling the pace. And that's where you can shift things, not by overpowering them, but by slowing them down. Tempo is everything. When you speak with intention, when you pause at the right moments, when you let silence do some of the talking, you change the rhythm. People start to lean in, instead of pulling away. You create space, not just for yourself, but for everyone else too. Let's say someone keeps interrupting you, talking fast, steering every topic back to themselves. Instead of speeding up to keep up, you slow down. You respond with calm, measured clarity. You don't get flustered. You don't try to compete. You anchor the room by choosing a different pace. And that choice sends a clear message. I don't need to be loud to be heard. I don't need to fight to matter. When you control the tempo, you regain control of the moment. Think about how powerful a pause can be. Just a few seconds of silence after you speak can make your words land heavier. It tells people this is worth thinking about. That kind of presence doesn't require volume. It requires poise, and poise is magnetic. The person who controls the room is rarely the one talking the most. It's the one who listens with purpose, speaks with weight, and chooses when to speak. It's the one who knows that not every space needs to be filled. That's sometimes the most powerful thing you can do, is wait, and then deliver your words, with precision. This isn't about shrinking, or fading into the background. It's about choosing your moments with care. It's about knowing your voice has value without needing to raise it for proof. It's about staying grounded when others are trying to take over. If you find yourself in a room with someone who dominates every conversation, try this. Slow your breath. Make eye contact. Speak with pauses. Use phrases like, let's take a second to think about that. Or hold on, I want to bring this back for a moment. You're not demanding space. You're fetting the space. And people feel that when others raise their voice to be heard, you become the one who doesn't have to. That's where real authority lives. Not in volume, but in restraint. Not in reaction, but in intention. And when you start communicating that way, people listen differently. They sense your presence before you even say a word. So don't be fooled by the noise. Loud doesn't mean right. Fast doesn't mean confident, and dominance doesn't mean leadership. You lead by how you carry yourself. By how you manage the energy, not mimic it. You set the tempo, and when you do, the room will follow your rhythm. Not the other way around. You don't need to raise your voice. You just need to raise your presence. Interrupt with purpose, not aggression. Because when a conversation is being monopolized, your silence doesn't just cost you your voice. It costs the room its balance. But let's be honest, many of us were raised to believe that interrupting is rude. That good people wait that politeness means patience, no matter how long you're left waiting. And while there's value in patience, there's also power in presence. If someone is dominating the space, you don't need to bulldoze them. You just need to know when and how to step in. There's a difference between interrupting to overpower and interrupting to restore fairness. Strategic interjections aren't an act of disrespect. They're a response to imbalance. If someone consistently talks over you, over others, or never pauses to allow room for conversation, jumping in isn't a violation, it's leadership. But it's not about being sharp, loud, or confrontational. It's about being clear and calculated. When you interrupt with purpose, your goal isn't to shut someone down, it's to open the conversation back up. That's a big distinction. You're not stealing the mic, you're sharing it.
So how do you do that? You use calm, assertive phrases that cut through the noise without escalating the energy. Try, "Let me pause you there for a second." Or, "I'd like to add something before we move on." Or even, "Before we go too far in that direction, can I jump in?" These are not shouts. They are steady taps on the table. Gentle nudges that say, "I'm here, I have something to contribute." And this moment needs to include more than just one voice. The truth is, people who dominate conversations often don't even realize they're doing it. They're in a flow, a rhythm, a spotlight, and sometimes it takes a purposeful interruption to make them aware. Not aggressive, not defensive, just intentional. The key is to stay grounded. Don't let frustration build until it explodes. Don't wait until you're seething just to blurt something out. Be proactive, not reactive. Interrupt early, before the imbalance becomes a pattern. This not only gives you more control, it also makes the conversation healthier for everyone involved. And don't just interrupt for yourself. Interrupt errors on behalf of others too. If you see someone getting sidelined or constantly cut off, step in. "Hey, I noticed Rachel was trying to say something earlier. Can we circle back to that?" That's not only respectful, it's responsible. You become a facilitator, not just a participant. You model what balanced communication looks like. Interrupting with purpose also teaches others how to interact with you. When you set a boundary by interjecting calmly and confidently, you shift the tone of future interaction. People learn that your silence doesn't mean agreement, that your pause isn't permission to overtake the space. They begin to recognize that conversations with you will have structure, mutual respect, and shared ownership. This is how you claim your space, without stepping on others. You do it with intention. You do it with timing. You do it with self-respect. Don't let the fear of being rude keep you from being real. Silence in the face of dominance doesn't serve you, and it doesn't serve the group either. Your voice matters, and sometimes the most respectful thing you can do is step in, speak up, and bring the balance back. Purposeful interruption isn't about ego, it's about equity. And once you learn how to use that tool wisely, you won't just change conversation. You'll start changing the way people communicate around you. Because you're not here to compete for space. You're here to create it. Bring it back to the table. That's your. When a conversation veers off course, when one voice drowns out the rest, when the discussion stops feeling like a group effort and starts feeling like a solo act, you don't have to challenge the person who's dominating. You don't have to outtalk them. You just have to gently steer the energy back to where it belongs. The whole room. Because conversations aren't meant to be owned. They're meant to be shared. When someone takes up all the space, whether they mean to or not, they shrink the opportunity for others to engage. And that's where you come in, not to shut them down, but to open things back up. You say something simple like, "That's an interesting point, but I'd love to hear what others think too." It's not confrontational, it's collaborative. It's a reset. That one sentence can completely shift the dynamic. It brings everyone back into focus. It reminds the group and the dominant speaker that there are more voices in the room, more ideas, more perspectives, and all of them deserve a place at the table. You don't have to wait for the perfect moment. You create it. You do that by noticing who hasn't spoken, who keeps getting interrupted, who's leaning forward, like they want to say something but never quite does. And then you invite them in. You say, "Ali, you had a thought earlier. What was that?" Or, "You've been quiet, Sarah. What's your take?" And just like that, you open the door. This doesn't make you the enforcer of fairness. It makes you the advocate for inclusion. You model what healthy dialogue looks like. You demonstrate that good conversations aren't about who talks the most. They're about who listens the best. And sometimes the best listener is the one who makes space for others to be heard. It also takes the pressure off you. You don't have to be the loudest or most assertive person to shift the energy. You just need to recognize when the scale tips and have the confidence to gently bring it back to balance. It's not about calling people out, it's about calling others in. And the beauty of this approach is that it's not just effective, it's contagious. The more you redirect the flow, the more others start to do the same. Suddenly the room gets quieter, more thoughtful, more engaged. People begin to wait their turn, not out of fear but out of respect. Because they've seen what shared space looks like. They've felt what it's like to be invited in, and they want to do the same for others. This practice is subtle, but powerful. It's the art of guiding without controlling, leading without dominating. You're not changing the conversation by force. You're shaping it through intention, through inclusion, through presence. So the next time someone takes over the room, don't compete with their volume. Don't try to wrestle the spotlight away. Just redirect the light, so that it hits more faces. Bring it back to the table. Make space. Hold space. Because a conversation isn't a performance, it's a circle, and everyone deserves a seat. Don't match energy, anchor it. That's the difference between reacting and leading. When someone dominates a conversation, storms in with intensity, or takes up more emotional space than they should, your instinct might be to match that energy, talk louder, push back, fight fire with fire. But what that really does is create more chaos, more tension, more noise, and no one hears anyone, not even themselves. Instead, be the anchor, the steady presence, the calm in the storm. Because the louder someone gets, the more your calm stands out. That calm isn't weakness, it's strength. It's a message. It tells everyone, including the dominant speaker, this conversation has a center, and I'm holding it. Think about how energy spreads. One person raises their voice, someone else raises theirs, and suddenly the room is charged, and no one's listening. But then one person stays grounded, speaks slowly, responds instead of reacts, and the room starts to settle. That person becomes the anchor, the tone setter. That can be you. This isn't about being passive, it's about being intentional. Anchoring doesn't mean sitting quietly while others take over. It means choosing your words with care. It means pausing before responding. It means asking thoughtful questions when others are trying to dominate with volume or speed. It means refusing to be pulled into a performance and instead choosing to participate with presence. People who dominate conversations often thrive on reaction. They speak fast, talk over others, or take control because they're used to getting a response, whether it's agreement, resistance, or even silence. But when you don't react the way they expect, when you stay calm and unshaken, you take back control without saying a word. Your energy teaches people how to engage with you. If you rise every time they rise, they learn to pull you into their pace. But if you stay rooted, they start adjusting to you. It's a subtle shift, but a powerful one, because you're no longer playing their game. You're changing the environment they play in. This also helps others in the room. Not everyone feels confident speaking up or pushing back against dominant personalities. But when you stay grounded, you give others permission to do the same. You create space that feels safe, not competitive. You model balance, not resistance. Being an anchor isn't always easy. Sometimes it means staying composed when you're frustrated. Sometimes it means breathing through the urge to interrupt or lash out. But that control, that composure, it changes things. It slows things down. It reminds people what real presence looks like. And the truth is, the most powerful person in the room is rarely the loudest. It's the one who stays centered when others spin out. It's the one who brings the temperature down without saying calm down. It's the one who listens not to reply but to guide the moment back to a healthier place. So the next time a conversation starts tipping too far one way, too fast, too loud, too self-centered, be the weight that balances it. Speak with clarity, pause with purpose, hold your ground with quiet confidence. Because you don't need to match someone else's energy to prove your worth. You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to dominate to be respected. You just need to anchor and let your calm do the talking. When it comes to handling people who dominate conversations, it's not about overpowering them. It's about owning your space with clarity, calm, and intention. You lead not by raising your voice, but by raising your presence. You teach people how to treat you by speaking up with purpose. You shift the energy not by reacting, but by anchoring it. And most importantly, you bring balance back to the room, not with force, but with awareness. You don't have to compete for space. You don't need to win every exchange. You just need to know your voice matters, and that it deserves to be heard, because conversations should never be a one-man show. They should be shared, respectful and so next time you're in a room where someone's doing all the talking, remember you have the right to pause, redirect, and speak. You have the power to shift the tempo. You have the influence to bring others in, and you have the presence to lead even in silence.